IBSI, weekly forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. On for several months, just getting it back up and started again. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Again, this is the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel weekly forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. I'm Dumisani Washington, the CEO and founder of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, here with Joshua Washington, Executive Director. We may be joined by board member Ms. Olga Mashwe Washington a little bit later on today in our weekly forum here. We usually hear about an hour or so, depending on what all is going on. So let's see here. All right. So again, welcome everybody. Glad that you are here. Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. Our website is IBSI.org. We actually started this as a clubhouse about a year ago. Each week, and we would come together. We had stopped for a while. We were doing other types of events and everything, and so we have returned. And what we're doing now is streaming. So if you're seeing us on IG live on my Instagram, Dumisani6, or on IBSI's Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, there are other social media, which would be Twitter, Facebook, our YouTube page, as well, and not LinkedIn just yet. We just started our LinkedIn page. For those of you who may have gotten a note about us being on LinkedIn, it might be my personal one, but I don't think we're on LinkedIn at all right now. We're still hooking that up. So it's going to be on either IBSI's or on mine. We'll have that for you hopefully in the next week or two. But you should be able to catch us on several different streaming. So again, wherever you are listening or viewing us from, welcome. I see there, it's funny because it's a little bit of a different format. I see we have our executive director on there. I was looking at different screens at different times and not always at the screen that our producer is actually putting up there, different people and everything. But Joshua, shout out. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can. So now making sure we're not getting the echo. So for those of you again out there, shout out to all of you on IG live. I don't know if you're hearing the echo when Joshua talks. I think what I need to do is mute Joshua, my computer. Go ahead, Joshua. Let me hear your voice again, sir.
Testing. Can you hear me?
All right. Got you. I think we're good. Now, those of you on IG, if you hear any echo, please let us know. Give us a little indicator and let us know what's happening. I think we're good to go now. So welcome again, everybody. Each week, we are here every Monday, each Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Those of our Israeli friends and African friends who join us, I know this is the middle of the morning for you. We at some point will do another installation. Sometimes we would do things in the afternoon so that we can kind of reach everybody, in the U.S. who can join us, but also at a decent hour, right? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, was it like 3 o'clock in the morning there in Central African time and Israel time, something like that. So again, this is also being streamed and recorded, so it will be on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page. So even if you're not able to join us live, you will be able to check it out as well. Again, so we have the faces. So those of you on Clubhouse, it is on Clubhouse. Again, we were there quite a bit before, but join us there as well. And if you're there, you can kind of give a shout out and you can share that and ping that as well. For right now, I think we're going to just, when we do our interactions, it's going to primarily be from Clubhouse, just because we'll be able to hear in real time. Those of you who are watching and other streaming, you can make comments, and I think our producer is checking those out. So if there's something pertinent that we need to know, because we do want to hear from you, go ahead and give that in there as well. We have several items. When we do these forums, the Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America, we cover everything from geopolitics to culture to religion to music and all of those different things. Much of what we talk about in terms of the multi-topics and the multifaceted nature of the topics are often based in, or can be found some of our bad mad toxic. Oh, someone said, yeah, someone said Clubhouse mad toxic. Yeah, that's another thing too, which we'll discuss that some more too. I had made the comment before that we saw as it rose, as Clubhouse rose in prominence, so did a lot of toxic stuff, right? I mean, a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of anti-African sentiment as well. I talked about this quite a bit in the past. That I saw a parallel between the more Jew hatred and Israel hatred was there, the more there's African hatred. People coming on saying lots of stuff about Africans, Nigerians, the whole thing. It was just amazing. That's not why we stopped, right? It wasn't a situation like we were afraid. I'm a big boy, right? We big boys, big girls. But it was just there was other things that we needed to do, but we were kind of watching that. But we are back there on Clubhouse as well as all the other streaming and everything. So when we cover these different topics or different areas of topics, we have different things that are outlined and everything, and we do have several things on the program on here today. We're going to jump in right in just a moment. But again, I want to let you know, again, you can go to IBSI.org and you can check out the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. We just completed a 9-month journey with our what we call IBSI ambassadors, several black young men, black men and women from across the country who went on a 9-month journey of discovery. We got together each month and opened up lots of different topics that dealt with Israel, with Africa, with Black Jewish synergy, all of those different things, Palestinian human rights, United Nations, you name it. And we made 2 overseas trips. We went to the motherland in December, which was South Africa, and then we went to the Holy Land in June. Lives will never be the same. At some point, we'll be having some of them kind of join us and talk about all those things as well. What we have done, ladies and gentlemen, now as we have launched officially the new season. Now we're making some tweaks with our IBSI ambassador one. We're making a couple announcements with you about that pretty soon. They did amazing. We are absolutely just floored with these amazing men and women. What we are now doing at this moment is focusing in on what we call the IBSI pastors. There's the clergy version of what's called the Peace Initiative, Plan for Education, Advocacy, and Community Engagement. It's our Peace Initiative. Again, you go to IBSI.org. You can find out more about it. We are now taking applications for the pastors who will be a part of that 9-month journey in which we'll go to South Africa again in December, late November, December, I believe it is, and then in Israel next year, right? So if you want to know more about that, you want to get more information about it, just go to IBSI.org. You'll see the Peace Initiative right there on the homepage. Click on that. You can learn more. Again, we are a nonprofit organization. Everything that we do is by the generosity, the kindness of our donors. So we are, again, you can, all the gifts that are given are tax deductible. So again, you can go to IBSI.org and you can be a part of that as well. We want to encourage you to become a legacy builder. A legacy builder is a monthly giver of $10 or more per month. IBSI.org, click donate, and then you'll find out more. And you click one more button, I think it's that the give butter thing, and boom, you'll see the different options that are there. So, all right, what we want to do here today is a kind of a couple of different things. Number one, we're going to set up something. Every third Tuesday of the evening, this is not streamed, every third Tuesday at 8 p.m., we have what's called our IBSI Pastors Present. That's an opportunity for pastors, clergy, or anyone. It doesn't have to just be them, but it is open because we deal with sometimes biblical, geopolitical, or justice themes. Tomorrow is the third Tuesday of the month, and the title of our meeting tomorrow is called Acts Chapter 2 and the Jews of Africa, Asia, and Europe. I'm going to do a little, overview of that here. But for those of you who are pastors, or if you have pastor friends, or if you have a pastor, they could be a rabbi, it could be clergy of any type, or anyone, because we're dealing with a lot of biblical things. But anyone is welcome. It's primarily for pastors in the U.S. and or Africa as well. It doesn't really matter. But if you want to be there, you'll see the link that's there as well that you can click on, and you can register for that on Zoom. That is a Zoom thing. That is not streamed. Those are more closed, not secretive, but they're closed events in that sense. They're not on YouTube and everything else like that. And we do have our discussion. So we would love for you to join us tomorrow, Tuesday, July 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern. I want to start there with that theme. In the New Testament, there is a very powerful story in Acts chapter 2, the second chapter of the book of Acts, written by Luke, who's also the writer, the author of the Gospel of Luke. And one of the reasons why I touch on this in my book Zionism and the Black Church as well, and that's also available on the store on IBSI.org. One of the things that we'll do both on tomorrow, but I'm going to just unpack it a little bit here, is talk about what we often term as the multi-ethnic Jewish diaspora. So I want to give you a couple of examples of what we're talking about. The Jewish people have been a diaspora people for millennia. Often for people who may know something about the history of Israel and the Jewish people, they'll understand maybe the diaspora, the scattering of the Jewish people after the time of the Roman Empire, or during the time of the Roman Empire, right? 70 AD, the Romans destroyed the temple. At 130, between 132 135 AD, under Emperor Hadrian, the last rebellion against the Roman Empire was put down, and it's called the Bar Kokhba Rebellion. And after that, the Romans, in great brutality, the Jewish people that they did not kill, they literally, as Jewish history records, carted them off. It's flung them from the Holy Land, right, to different areas throughout Europe, Africa, and Asia. But we understand that diaspora, that the Jewish presence throughout much of the known world was before the scattering that the Romans imposed then in the earlier part of the first century. So what we'll do with the pastors, and we'll do here for a moment here, is I want to take you a couple of different places and also share some fascinating stuff with you. I had the privilege and the honor of working as we work with our main partners in Israel, which is the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, JCPA. Shout out to Dan Diker, who is the president. Shout out to Tirza, who is the utility person. She does everything. She's an attorney. She's a researcher, and all those people, and Yekio Leiter and all the other ones that are there. I may be seeing some of them in a couple of weeks because I'll be out in Israel again. My fourth time this year, I'll be in Israel for the Africa Leadership Summit. We've talked about that a little bit before. You can check out some of those as well on the link. But I want to do this with you. There's a narrative for those of you who are Christians and you know this part of the scriptures. If you may not be Christian, you may not know this part of it. I'm going to just give you like a brief overview, but we're taking you back about 2,000 years during the first century. And what happens in the book of Acts chapter 2 is that the writer Luke gives us a narrative. Now, in the book of Acts, this takes up, it's called the Acts of the Apostles, right? And right after that, I see. Thank you so much for your. No, someone asked me about Jewish. No, I am not Jewish. I am. Well, it's funny. My wife has Igbo blood, and so my Igbo Hebrew friend said that because of that, I am Hebrew. But in terms of Jewish by faith, I am not. I am a Christian, or a Hebrew roots Christian, if you will. Someone was asking that question. So Acts chapter 1 and 2, or the book of Acts is called the book of the Acts of the Apostles, right? And this is literally the story of what we often call the early church. Jesus has died, risen, and ascended from Mount of Olives. This picks up right after those events, right? And then now his followers and the main leaders in charge, all of them Jewish, ladies and gentlemen, not a Gentile in the bunch, but all of them Jewish, right? He leaves them in charge and he gives them instructions to wait for the quote unquote promise from the Father, right? They are waiting for the Holy Spirit to be given to them to empower them to do the work of ministry, right? So they go to Jerusalem, and it is commonly believed that they're in the upper room, quite possibly the same upper room in which they had their Passover Seder before Jesus was crucified, right? So this was is a borrowed room. It's a room of a person. If you know some of the Gospels, Jesus literally tells his apostles, go and you'll see a man who's staying near this area here. Ask him where we can have the Passover Seder. So it's generally believed that the events of the book of Acts here, Acts chapter 1 and 2, or particularly the Feast of Pentecost, which we'll come to in a second, happens here in the upper room. In the upper room, they are praying, the Bible says in Acts chapter 2, and they are praying about 120 men and women together, because it mentions that the men and women are in this ministry together, and they are seeking God, they're praying, they're worshiping, and they're waiting on this promise that Jesus said was coming. We believe it was about 10 days that they were there, because in the book of Acts, it says that Jesus appeared to his disciples over a 40-day period. Why does that become relevant? Well, we're talking about the period of time from Passover to Pentecost, what our Jewish friends call Shavuot, or weeks, right? What Christians call Pentecost, it is originally in its Jewish context the Feast of Shavuot, or Shavuot, which is weeks, right? So the apostles are gathered in Jerusalem in this upper room, as are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of Jewish pilgrims who are also in Jerusalem, because again, according to the Torah, according to the Jewish scriptures, there is to be a pilgrimage made, particularly of the men of Israel, from all over, from wherever they are living. If they are physically able, they are to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. Passover, Pentecost, about 50 days later, 7 weeks plus another day, and then Sukkot, which is Tabernacles, which would be later in the fall. So if you're traveling from a long distance, it may not be long distance as a Jewish man or woman coming to Jerusalem for the Feast of Pentecost or the Feast of Passover. If you're celebrating those in Jerusalem, right, you may stay until both feasts are completed, which was a whole Passover season, meaning that you may come for Passover. And we read about this in the Gospels. Jesus goes to Jerusalem with his disciples, and they have the Passover Seder, and all of these things are happening. Jesus is crucified. He raises again on the 3rd day. He ascends, and then he tells his disciples to wait for the promise. So this is where we pick up this story, right? In Acts chapter 2, Luke describes what Christians know as the Feast of Pentecost, right? The giving of the Holy Spirit, the giving of what in the Hebrew is the Ruach, right? And it says that when they were on one accord, they were praying together, and like a sound, like a rushing mighty wind came, and what looked like cloven tongues of fire rested on each of the individuals, the men and the women in the house, and they began to speak with other languages as the Spirit of God gave them utterance. It's a supernatural manifestation as they begin to speak in literally known languages, but not known to them, right? They call some of the other translations in the English say they spoke with tongues, right? They spoke with tongues. They weren't just saying words unintelligibly to other people who would know those languages. And we're going to talk about those languages in a minute. Acts chapter 2. So what we have, if you're on the screen, if you're on Clubhouse, you can't see this, but what we're going to do is put on and give me item number 1. So item number 1 here, if you see on the screen, and I got something in my way there, on the screen here is Acts chapter 2, verses 5 through 11. But it's just, instead of pulling up the actual scripture just to save a little bit of time, right? I just put Acts chapter 2, verses 5 through 11. I condensed it and put it in modern day language. Meaning, if you were to go to it and read it in any of the English versions, Luke begins to give what I call a roll call of nations. Now, Luke is describing what's happening as these Jewish men and women in this upper room. Someone says, I can't see. If you're on Instagram, you can't see this. We're on all of our other scribes. Thank you for saying that, whoever you are. That's Boo 90210. All right, Boo Boo 90211, or Bee Boo, or something like that. This is on a screen. We are, those of you on Instagram, on any other access to IBSI's social media, which would include Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, right? I believe you can see this as a screen. If not, those of you on Instagram, fear not, I will read it for you, right? I'll kind of multitask here. So Acts chapter 2, Luke describes, now remember what's happening here, this miraculous thing. The Holy Spirit has come. These men and women begin to speak in these different languages, just supernaturally, right? It is interesting. The Jewish sages teach that when God spoke the Torah at Sinai, though he was speaking in Hebrew, if you were there, whatever language you spoke, if you were not Israelite, you would have heard those words in your language. It's not said in the text, it says what the sages, the actual, some of the wise commentators, Jewish commentators have said about that. And it's interesting that in the book of Acts, chapter 2, something like that happens miraculously, in which these men and women, it says, are declaring the wonderful works of God, right? But they're declaring it in specific tongues. So here in Acts chapter 2, I'm going to just read for you. And again, you don't see this, but unless if you're on Instagram or on Clubhouse as well, right? But I will read it here. I'm just reading Acts chapter 2, verses 5 to 11, really short, but I'm doing it in what would be a modern day version. Jews from all over the world were in Jerusalem for the Feast of Pentecost, or Shavuot, Feast of Weeks. They had come from Iran, Iraq, Syria, Judea, of course, they're in Judea, Lebanon, Turkey, Greece, Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Morocco, Rome, Asia, including as far as China and India. I'll come back to that in a moment. Crete, Arabia, Ethiopia, Sudan, Yemen, and beyond. Each heard the wonderful works of God in his own language, miraculously proclaimed by the Jews from Galilee. Now, if you were to go to Acts chapter 2, verses 5 to 11, you would not read it in that way. You're going to read words like Cappadocia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, words that we don't use anymore. And they are referring to, like, for example, Media, which is Persia, which is modern day Iran. I'm not looking at the other screen right now in terms of the other verses in the actual English translation of it, but he's actually listing different ones, and he lists Crete, he lists Greece, he lists Egypt, he lists Rome by name, right? I filled in things like Libya, Algeria, because he's talking about these different regions throughout North Africa, the Middle East, going towards Asia and going into the Mediterranean and going into Europe. Literally Jews who have come and made pilgrimage to Jerusalem from what you and I today would consider Africa, Asia, and Europe, right? This is, again, some 2,000 years ago. And why is that significant? There has not been the diaspora that the Romans would impose on the Jewish people for another 70 years, at least at the 70 years at the destruction of the temple. And then, of course, another 130 plus years at the Shimon Bar Kokhba revolt, meaning that for some 130 years before the ultimate destruction and renaming of Judea to Palestine, which is what the Romans did, you have Jews from what Luke called every nation under heaven, meaning the Jewish people already 2,000 years ago and more were already in communities throughout different portions of North Africa, and as well as Ethiopia. If you know Acts chapter 8, you get to Acts chapter 8, boom, here's the Ethiopian Jew who's come to Jerusalem to worship, and he's going back home, right? This is literally something that's discussed matter-of-factly in this ancient Christian text, right? Literally, since we get the title of this talk, Europe, Africa, and Asia, the Jews of Europe, Africa, and Asia. This is what's happening here, among other things. It is letting us know. I want to make two quick comments. Number one, Luke, who's telling this narrative at a pretty fast clip, what he does is what I call pumps the brakes to give us a geography lesson. Why? Who knows why? All we know that 2,000 years later, one of the things that's often debated about both the modern state of Israel, right, and the Jewish people themselves is their identity, right? Those who say Jews can only be white and Jews who are black are fake because there's no such thing as black Jews, wrong. Those who say Jews can only be black and there's no such thing as white are different shades because the real ones, they're also wrong. What's amazing here is that in this text 2,000 years ago, shout out to Miss Zephanie logging on there. Hey, my girl who lives out all the way in Hawaii. I don't know what part of the world. It's like where in the world is Carmen San Diego when I ever see Zephanie. Hi, baby. when you're looking at this ancient text, this 2,000-year-old text, and understanding that Luke is explaining to us, to the modern reader, that there are Jews, it's amazing because he takes time. Is it pertinent to the story? Well, yes, in the sense that what happens is that these Jews from Galilee are speaking the languages of the people that I just mentioned. That means they're speaking perfect Arabic. They're speaking perfect. I don't know if Amharic was 2,000 years old. I'm sure there's Arges, which is the ancient language in terms of the holy books of Ethiopia. They're speaking perfect Greek. They're speaking different Asian languages. Why? Because Luke comments not just that there were Jews from all over the world in Jerusalem, which is not, if you understand the Jewish side of that, that's not unusual. It's the Feast of Pentecost or the Feast of Shavuot. It's not unusual. Of course, Jews have made pilgrimage. What Luke is saying is that while Jews from every nation under heaven are in Jerusalem, this phenomenal thing happens where the Spirit of God falls on these Jewish men and women in this upper room, and they begin to speak in perfect Arabic. They begin to speak in perfect Greek. They begin to speak in perfect, possibly Amharic, or what would have been the Ethiopian language. They are speaking so that the people, the Jewish people in Jerusalem who are there, are hearing this, and they can hear. They literally say, we hear them declaring the wonderful works of God in our own language. What do I mean, our own language? They're Jews. Well, they're Jews whose first language may be Arabic, whose first language may be Greek, depending on what part of the world they are from. But they have made pilgrimage to Jerusalem because they are observant Jews who've come to Jerusalem. How observant? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying how religious they are, but they've come for the holy day, possibly both Passover and Shavuot in the land. I made a comment when I told you Asia, because it's amazing. So again, I mentioned to you, and give me the map, give me item number 2. Now, again, if you're on Clubhouse, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, you can't see this. It's all right. If you have multiple devices, and you can just switch over to Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. You can click on it on, again, Facebook, YouTube, and what was the other one? Facebook and Twitter, right? Any of its IBSI's, IBSI's. And if you're not sure, you go to IBSI.org. Our links to our social media are on our homepage as well. So if you can't find it, the quickest way is go boom, IBSI.org, boom, click, and then find whichever one you want, YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff. For those of you looking, you see a map there. In this map, and I don't have a way to point and everything, I don't think, because you probably can't see my cursor on here. But in the map, you will see it's just a modern map of North Africa and the Middle East. Well, not even just North Africa, much of sub-Saharan Africa as well, right? It goes as far south as Kenya and Congo. It says Zaire. That's how old this map is. This is Zaire. It's actually the Congo. And as far north as Turkey and Italy and France and Spain. Well, if you picture that map, you can't see it. I'm letting you guys know audibly here that in this map, I can see images now. No, we're here on Facebook. I can see images now here. Okay, someone just be able to note that they're on Facebook now. They can see the images, right? So again, if you have your Facebook app on your phone and you're on, Clubhouse, or if you're on Instagram, just boom, click on it and go to our webpage, go to our Facebook page. You'll see that. If you're looking at that map, look there where it says Saudi Arabia, where it says Egypt, where it says Turkey. Of course, that little tiny section in there is Israel. It's always been surrounded by other people. This is nothing new, right? But the reason I'm saying this to you is that when Luke explains who is in Jerusalem, he's talking about Jews who've come from virtually everywhere you see on this map and beyond, including modern day Turkey, which would be Cappadocia, modern day Iraq, which would be Babylon, or there's also Chaldea, modern day Iran, which would be Persia, right? Egypt, Libya, Arabia. We call it Saudi Arabia, but this is where Arabia was, right there, right, near the Horn of Africa. Sudan, Algeria, Morocco, because it talks about coming as far away as from Rome for other parts of the Mediterranean, right? From Greece. That means you have Jews in the Holy Land, in Jerusalem, 2,000 years ago, from literally Europe, Asia and Africa. Let me pause here and say again, for those who say Jews can only be X, Y, and Z, not only is that meaning they can only be, the real Jews are Ashkenazi Jews from Germany. There's no such thing as a real Jew. The real Jews are the Jews that came, that are part of the Ethiopian Jews. Those are the real one. No, there's not. What you're seeing here in this narrative is just one small example of Jews from what Luke called every nation under heaven. Can I go a little bit further? That means in terms of their physical features, they may look somewhat Indian, Chinese, they may look somewhat Egyptian. And I mean by that stereotypically, there's no one person that represents what a person from India looks like. But what we're saying is that they have been diaspora. And for a while, I'm going to give you one small example, right? Just one small example. Because I mentioned to you India. I said Persia, possibly as far east as India and China. For those who might go, oh, what do you mean as far as that? Well, we know that there were already Jewish communities that far as Kaifeng, as far as India, because we have the records of them. I had the honor of, again, this is the IBSI's Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. You're here every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I had the honor of interviewing a young man by the name of Elias Dandecker. He is part of the Jews, Jews of India. He's descended from one of the communities from India. There's a specific region. I don't remember the region right now here. And I had the opportunity to interview him back in February this year as part of our collaboration with the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. And if we can pull up item number 4. Is that item number 4? What I'm going to do, we're loading up a clip. So now you won't be able to see it on the other ones unless you're on the other social media, but you'll be able to hear this. So Elias, and I encourage you, this whole interview is on our website. If you go to IBSI.org, click videos, and you'll see one of the titles will be The Jews of India in Israel, right? Elias gave me, I knew some about the Jews of India, particularly from the India-Burma region. They are the ones who most recently been making aliyah, going to Israel from India. Many of them under the organization of Shavei Israel, led by Rabbi. I'm so sorry, Rabbi. It's escaping me right now. Jaffe, you remember the Rabbi of Shavei Israel? Just let me know if you remember that. And just my brain is not working like that. Sorry about that. I didn't write that down. I'm doing that extemporaneously. I had the opportunity to learn more about the Jews of India Burma from him. From Elias, I learned that there are multiple communities.
Michael Freund.
Thank you.
Give me a second. Yeah, I remember that video. Yeah.
Rabbi Michael Freund, who is over Shavei Israel, they do wonderful work. And they also, as well as Yael Eckstein with International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, I believe they've also helped the Jews of India, Burma make aliyah. Elias gave me some information about a Jewish community in India that I had never heard of. Got a fascinating education. So I would encourage you to, it's one of my most viewed videos on YouTube, right? On our newer YouTube channel. But I want to play you a little clip of his. He talks about the origins of this Jewish community that left Israel, that left Judah during the time of the Maccabean revolt, which would have been around, again, 130 or so BC, right? Before the Common Era, or before Christ, BC before Christ, or BCE before the Common Era. Again, a whole century and a third before the time of Jesus, before the time of the Common Era. He talks about the origins of this Jewish community from India. If you have that clip, I think it's item number 4. Go ahead and play that for us.
They left in the beginning of what became the Hasmonite Rebellion. Okay. More or less.
Yes, sir.
And
I'm gonna again, you're gonna, some of you might see it.
Yes, we left in the whole
not
messy things.
I don't hear it either.
They left for Egypt. There was a
we're going
Jewish,
to
Hebrew
if not, I'll have to
community in Egypt.
tell you what he's saying.
in the island of Yeb or
right.
Elephantine.
So some of
There
you
was
are watching
another
this
temple, a lot of
on there,
the
and you're seeing him
Kohanim
talk.
or
I'm
the
not sure why
priesthood
the
clans,
audio is not. Oh, you know what?
and
Hold
they
on
were
one second. Hold
supposed to
on.
be
Can you
part
start it
of the
again? I
priesthood.
know why it's not working because I have the audio muted on mine. Start it again one more time. That was my bad. Here we go. And start from the beginning. This is Elias Dandecker of the Indian Jewish community, talking about some of the origins of that community, the Jews of India. Go ahead and play for one more time. Uh-oh, if you can. Little technical difficulty there. All right, they're gonna load up again. Here we go. It's coming, you guys. Sorry about that. All right, while the producer is doing that, when he shares this, obviously it's a revelation for me. So I'm interviewing him for everybody who's watching, but I'm in the classroom as well, right? And I don't bring up Acts at all, chapter 2. I'm just listening to him. I don't want to, start talking and get in the middle of the conversation. But when Elias begins to talk about the origins of the community, and I had to get first clarification about when he meant, he's talking about 130 plus years before what I just read for you in Acts chapter 2, right? About 130 plus years before that, there were Jews as far east as India who had very much knowledge of the fact that they had left. He even talks about why they left, right? Because he gives a specific reason, right? And then later on, if you watch the whole interview, he talks about when they began to come back. And it was long before the state of Israel got independence in 1948. It actually happened after the First World War. So this is during the earlier part of the 20th century. In the early 1900s is when some of the Jewish community from this area of India began to return. He even talked about the fact that the first Zionist conference that was established by Theodor Herzl, the Jews of India from his community were actually invited to come to that conference because Theodor Herzl had reached out to the diaspora, right? From Europe, from North Africa, from India. This is literally, so my mind is being blown. He said, and it's amazing, if you have to watch this, I didn't pull up this clip, but if you see it, he'll watch in there, he'll explain how that community from India, his community where he's from, where he's descended, elected not to attend the Zionist conference because they were going to, quote, wait for the Messiah. He said that they decided they weren't going to come and be a part of this discussion of the modern state of Israel. He said, but they supported it financially. So they sent money to Theodor Herzl and the organization for the purpose of actually convening, but they didn't convene. They decided to not go. It was after the First World War, where many Indians served in the British Army, when they are now in a liberated Israel or the Levant, what the Romans called Palestine, after it had been taken over by or wrested control from the Ottoman Empire. And what happened is, as he explained, it was fascinating. As they are there in the land, they are seeing the Jews of Morocco. They're seeing the Jews of different parts of Europe. They are already in the land. Again, this is decades before Israel declares independence. And the Jews of India there are seeing it. And they're like, oh my gosh, we have to be a part of this. And then they begin to move as well after having left over at this point close to 2,000 years ago, right? Because they left again during the time of the Maccabean revolt. So I guess we're not going to get the video up. It's not going to. Oh, it is great. Okay, let's check it out here.
In the beginning of what became the Hasmonite rebellion, more or less.
Yes, sir.
And the holiday of Hanukkah that we celebrate.
Yes,
we
sir.
left in the whole messy things, as we say. They left for Egypt. There was a Jewish, Hebrew community in Egypt.
Okay.
In the island of Yeb or Elephantine, there was another temple, a lot of the Kohanim or the priesthood clans.
Right.
And they were supposed to be part of the priesthood clan, so they say.
Yes, sir.
They went to Egypt, and from Egypt they took ships towards India. One ship, some people suggested that left that area, went to the eastern part of Africa, and they became one of the people known as the Lamba people of East Africa, who also claim Hebrew descent.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes.
and And I do agree with that.
Yes, sir.
And then they left to India. The ship was wrecked close to the shores of what is now today is the Kunakan coast. And there were 14 survivors.
Wow.
In our chronicles is 7 men and 7 women. And they actually consisted the base of the Bnei Israel community, the first ones.
Wow.
So that was a clip from the Jews of India in Israel. Again, that if you want to check out that whole interview, it's on our website, IBSI.org. I was fascinated because in that short, about a minute clip, he touched on so many different things. And so I'm trying to be a good interviewer and I'd ask 5 questions at once. So we kept, it's a pretty long interview. We talked for about an hour or so. But he touched on everything from the Limba of Eastern and Southern Africa, when many of them are based in Zimbabwe and in South Africa. He talks about how his tribe, these Jewish people, after the ship, they had a ship that they took after they left Jerusalem, they left Israel, they go down into Egypt, they take a ship. This is over a longer period of time. Many of them wind up sailing and making it eventually to India. Another group went on another ship and went further down other parts of Africa, and then wound up just in East Africa, and then became a part of the Limba tribe, which I had never heard that before, right? These are fascinating. And he has all of his receipts. He writes books. He has different articles and artifacts and everything. He speaks across around the world, particularly after COVID. He was mainly there just kind of in-house in terms of Israel and different universities and everything. I remember one of the stories he tells in the actual interview. He talks about how he shared some of this with one of his professors there at one of the Israeli universities, who was kind of, thought his claims were dubious. He wasn't really sure. Then he brought the books and everything as I showing him, and even he began to give the professor something of an education about this part of the diaspora. Again, this one of those stories was really fascinating. Why do I bring that up? So when you're reading the book of Acts, and he says, as far as, and he begins to talk about other areas that go towards Asia, well, it's very possible. I don't know this as a fact. Obviously, I wasn't there 2,000 years ago. But then that lets us know that there are Jewish communities as far east as India who may very well have made the pilgrimage at the Feast of Shavuot during the 1st century of this narrative that Luke is talking about, right? He's explaining to us the Jews from literally all over the known world, who then they come together, meeting in Jerusalem for the feast days of possibly Passover, but definitely for the Feast of Shavuot. So those of you who might be joining us, pastors, we're going to be unpacking that and going even further tomorrow. So pastors, leaders, or others, you can join us tomorrow. Every 3rd Tuesday, we have a separate Zoom session that's called IBSI Pastors Present. You can click on the link there and you can register for that Zoom session. And we're going to be discussing this together and with some of the other pastors and leaders. So we're looking forward to doing that with you. We're going to give you that as that overview there as well. All right. So absolutely, we're fascinated by it. And we're going to be talking about that and getting some more information from some other people. I want to also, when we have our meeting, our past IBSI Pastors event, we're also going to be updating on the IBSI Pastors, the Peace Initiative, and I've shared that video. So go ahead and let's queue up item number 3. Go ahead and play it for me. This is the IBSI Pastors video that talks about the registration real quick. And so for those of you who are Black or African pastors, bishops, or ministry leaders, we are already recruiting and we are accepting applications that they're already coming in. We'll be taking no more than 20 on this 9-month journey. We'll be headed to South Africa in November, December, and then to Israel in May of next year. So let's go ahead and roll that. IBSI has launched its plan for education, advocacy, and community engagement, the Peace Initiative, for Black and African pastors, bishops, and ministry leaders. It is a 9-month journey of discovery that includes 2 overseas trips: South Africa in November and December, and Israel in May. For details, please visit ibsi.org and click on Clergy Peace Initiative, or email info@ibsi-now.org. I do have a little technical difficulty. I'm not sure why that's not. There you go. And you go to IBSI.org to get more information about the Peace Initiative. Pastors, ministry leaders, bishops, this is our focus for us in this next 9-month journey. It was just an amazing time that we had with IBSI ambassadors who are from across the country. Again, you go to IBSI.org, get more information. If you are not a pastor or a ministry leader, but you are part of a ministry, you have a pastor or bishop who may be interested in that and wants more information, please send him or her to ibsi.org. And they can also email us to info@ibsi-now.org, and we can give you more information about that as well. We are focused on going on South Africa for our motherland, and then, of course, the Holy Land is in the spring. But as we continue to, God say the same, do this peace initiative, there'll be other parts of the continent that we go to. We're already looking at going to different parts of East Africa, including Uganda, including Ethiopia, West Africa, including Togo, including Ghana. So again, we want you to, if you want more information about that, go to ibsi.org. And yeah, we're gearing up to do that. It starts officially in September, although the applications are being taken now. And the deadline for the applications is August the 25th. Again, we have a limited number, only 20, no more than 20. It may not even be the whole 20, but it'll be no more than 20 that we take on this initial pilgrimage here, this initial pilot, I should say, of the Peace Initiative. So we're looking forward to doing that with you. More information, go to ibsi.org. All right. I want to move on to one other thing. Joshua, I'm going to pause here. I don't know if I saw you on there. Oh, I saw him backstage. He may have gone backstage. Maybe coming back a little bit later on. I'll just check on that and see. That was right when I was going to say something to him. I don't see him on the screen, but I'll see him back in a second. So yeah, we're looking forward to that and having that discussion together. There are other things that are happening, right? Again, in our forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. And I want to here touch on a couple of, or at least if I can have the time that I have, one of them in particular. When we're talking about Africa, Israel, Black Jewish synergy, and the work that we do, that's both cultural, geopolitical, all those things. One of the things that's always on our radar is what is happening in the region of Africa and in Israel. And one of those things, particularly as Christians, although IBSI is not a Christian organization, but I'm saying this now as a pastor, as we're talking about the pastors thing, there is a Christian genocide. Many of you are already aware. Some of you are not. But there's been a genocide, a religious persecution of not just Christians, but other religious minorities in predominantly Muslim lands, right? But in Islamist lands, right? Not just all Muslims in general, but unfortunately, where there is extremism and all kinds of violence, there are Christians and Muslims and other religions that are dying at the hands of radical Muslims of this Islamist sect in different parts of the region, including probably primarily Nigeria, where over the last 12 years, some 43,000 plus Christians have been slaughtered. Again, Muslims are dying in these situations as well, right? Those who are not from the sex or the mindsets of some of these that are the radicals that are abducting people, burning churches, and all of these things. There's an article that was written just recently, and I recommend if you want to know about these things, hey, how can I find out about these things? How can I stay up to date on these things? I recommend, among other sources, Gatestone Institute. It's not the only one, particularly for the Christian part of it. You can also go to Voice of the Martyrs. They actually track Christian persecution around the world. In the world, the most persecuted ethnic group, though it is a religion as well, is Jewish. The most persecuted religion, not so much ethnic group, is actually Christian. And there are thousands who are perishing every day. I think I see Olga's here. She may be coming here in just a moment, so you can make her appearance, which would be cool. That'd be great. I see there. If you're on the screen there, you see our board member and our speakers bureau chief, Miss Olga Michwe. Hey, Olga, how you doing?
How are you, sir? Hello, everybody.
She has joined us. That's why we kicked Joshua to the curb. No, I'm just kidding. So Joshua, I don't see him. They are there. I'm sure the boys are down. They've been not feeling too well on the last couple of days. I think they're starting to bounce back because they're kids. But Olga, we were just here in our time here, just started to talk about for a moment the Christian persecution. And Maria, our producer, go ahead and put that screen up there. There is a latest article, everyone, in Gapestone that is actually entitled, if I can find it, that is item number 8. Christians are here really need help. The persecution of Christians, June 2023. It's an update. If you can share that on the screen, those of you, I'm not going to read the whole article, but I would encourage you, if you're there on our website, any of our social media, you'll see it. Again, Gatestone is not the only source for this type of information. There are other sites and organizations that do it, but we do highly recommend them. They've been doing it for a long time. They have amazing writers that cover lots of different things: Israel, Middle East, Africa, religion, politics. And they are one of the sites that we found, particularly non-Christian sites, actually run by dear Miss Nina Rosenwald of Rosenwald Lore. Yes, that Rosenwald, the granddaughter of Julius Rosenwald of the Rosenwald Schools of Booker T. Washington. There's a shout out to our crack staff. Our video of the Rosenwald Schools coming out here in the next few weeks. Look for that in the beginning of August. But if you can share that screen a little bit, Maria, go ahead and give me that, Mrs. Producer. I'm starting to name on there. I just want to point out something to you in this article, that it doesn't focus just on Nigeria. And I saw the screen share before, but I don't see it now. I'm not sure why I don't see it at this moment. But let me see if I can pull it myself. This article, which again, I'm not going to read the whole article. I'm just going to kind of look at it here for a moment. It's written by Raymond Ibrahim. If it talks about, I want to read one clip for you. And this is the one I think we posted earlier today that deals specifically with Nigeria. And it says, and I quote from the article, "The genocide of Christians at the hands of Muslims continued to rage. According to a June 3rd report, Muslim Fulani jihadists," Fulani is a specific tribe there in Nigeria, "slaughtered 2,500 Christians and burned down or wantonly destroyed 18,200 churches in the first 6 months of 2023. I'm going to read that again. Fulani jihadists slaughtered 2,500 Christians and burned down or wantonly destroyed 18,200 churches in just the first 6 months of 2023. 50 million Christians have further been forced out of their ancestral homes and lands into displacement and homelessness. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the definition of genocide. Why do we focus on it as Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel? Well, first of all, again, we are Christians, we are Christian leaders, and our Bible tells us to pray for, be concerned about those who are in this type of distress. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 3, pray for those who are in bondage as if you are bound with them. But we also do it because it is a natural fit for what the work of IBSI does. For those of you who know, the cynics, the dismissing them, no matter what other people say, and all the Israel haters and all that stuff in the region, the freest nation in the region, when I mean the region, I'm talking about Africa and Middle East, is the Jewish state of Israel. It is the Jewish state of Israel in which Christians and Muslims and Druze and Baha'is and you name it, they are able to worship freely. It is no more a perfect place than any other place, but you are not persecuted for your beliefs, for who you are. None of the, you have, not only that, Christians are actually free and growing in number, right? And this is sometimes for, I have many Jewish friends throughout Israel, and they know it is the Jewish state. They are glad, grateful, and claim it as the Jewish state, and freely, allow other people to worship. They just don't want people bothering them, right? To try to make them worship in some other way other than being Jewish men and women, right? And sometimes that, like any other community, that can kind of, community meaning a community of people, different faiths and everything. Jewish brothers and sisters, want to worship like they worship. Here, the Christians there are free. all the Israel haters, all the anti-Semites, and all the what we do at the IBSI, among many other things. Not only do we defend the Jewish state, not only do we defend the strong Israel-Africa alliance, not only do we defend a strong Black-Jewish synergy, we also tell the truth about the region. Now, only one other thing with that article that I was just looking at again, the article is from Gatestone, and there was a screen share on it. I don't think we're sharing it on the screen there, but it lists for you. I'm not going to quote from it again, but it lists other countries. So it's not just Nigeria, it's the Democratic Republic of Congo, the people who've been killed and abducted there, the Christian persecution. Then also Pakistan. It mentions Egypt. It mentions Uganda. It mentions Indonesia, and maybe a couple of other nations that are there. Again, Raymond Ibrahim, I've never met him before. I don't know him personally, but does wonderful, wonderful writing on this. This is, I'm not sure if that's his main focus with Gatestone, but he's written many articles about this type of persecution that's actually going on. We bring these things, ladies and gentlemen, to the attention of others, for pastors, for other leaders, everything, so that you can be praying. There's other things that you can do to be active in helping relieve some of the suffering that's actually happening there. We also point out, for example, the slave trade that is very well alive and well there in this region of the world. Unfortunately, in places like Sudan, like Mauritania, like Libya. And we are partnered with our good friend, Mr. Charles Jacobs' organization. And we have some information we'll be sharing with you. I mentioned it before about us helping bring more awareness to that, both to our leaders in Washington, D.C. and beyond, about the modern day slave trade. This is how we talk about the human trafficking, which is a huge topic right now in the United States. Those of us who've been watching and tracking these types of things for years, we know that these are not conspiracy theories. Yes, are there people who might want to jump on board types of very ghastly things and use them for their own purposes? Unfortunately, yes, the people will use righteous causes for their own purposes to do whatever they want to do. Unfortunately, that's the truth. But that doesn't stop the fact that human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that includes the slave trade that is still alive and well there in this part of the world. Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, there's slavery that still happens there, and many of those slaves, if not the most of them, are actually African, right? So IBSI is working on those as well, to not just bring awareness, but to actually work with other organizations about to bring relief to what's actually going on here. We are determined to be a part of what we call a modern day abolitionist movement, right? The slavery in the United States and the Western world didn't just end. There were very brave people, both slave Africans, both freed Africans, both white people, Jewish people, those who came together and formed the abolitionist movement, right? So people often say, well, I lived back then, I'd fight against it. You know what? You would do about slavery then exactly what you're doing about it now. I'm not trying to be mean, but whatever you're doing about slavery now is what you would do 200 years from now, when 200 years ago, when it was actually, oh, that's not me, Pastor Msani. No, okay. Why? Because slavery is even more rampant now, because slaves are even cheaper now than they were during the transatlantic slave trade. At the height of the slave trade, do you know, and I did the research on it, I don't have all the papers with me right now, but I believe that a young male healthy slave cost as much as $18,000 modern day money. But the modern day equivalent, about $18,000. That's a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen. You have to be pretty well heeled to buy a slave. Now you can buy slaves for $200-$300 or less, depending on where you're getting them from. And they could be children, they could be women. This is actually happening into the millions of people in the billions of dollars, right? Sometimes we get overwhelmed by all of that darkness and all that bad. But what I encourage people to do is focus. No, you and I can't fix everything ourselves, but we can, by God's grace, do the part we're supposed to do. What can I do? And one of the reasons why IBSI exists is to give you some tangible things that you can do to fight anti-Semitism, to fight race hatred, to influence and enhance the Black-Jewish synergy, the Israel-Africa alliance, those types of things. So I'm going to pause there. Olga, you and I have talked about this before, obviously. These are things, Africa, huge continent. And there's sometimes you were sharing with us, sometimes not even, sometimes an awareness throughout sometimes some of the African communities about some of the other things that are going on the continent because it's so huge. Can you share that about with us for us, please, ma'am?
So, surprise, surprise, for some people, Africa is not a country and in fact has 54 countries of itself. And with the size that it is from north all the way down south, east, as well as west, um, the news in South Africa, where I'm from, and it's also similar in various other parts of the continent, doesn't always give an indication as to what's going on, especially issues that are very nuanced, and especially issues that unfortunately deal with terrorism. So I, for the very first time, was made aware of the modern day slave trade when I came to the United States and began working with IBSI and some of the other organizations. And I would like to think of myself as somebody that's learned. And I say that to say that the work that IBSI is doing together with various other organizations such as Christian Solidarity International and reports that come from Gatestone are crucial. And the plea and the request is that when anybody comes across this information, that we don't just keep silent with it, that we spread it, including to friends who are of African descent in various parts of the diaspora. Just because there are Africans in the diaspora doesn't necessarily mean that they are aware and or even aware of its extreme, the extent of it. This is also one of the reasons why IBSI is very passionate about ensuring that the truth about Israel and Israel's capability to offer assistance to African nations such as Nigeria with its counterterrorism expertise is very, very important.
I didn't do this before, but to our producer, if you see it on your little text that there, iabolish.org is the actual name of the organization with which IBSI is partnering. We are already in an official partnership. There's some other details that we're kind of working out. We've already even shot a video. Shout out to Mr. David Kay and the whole team at David and Goliath Project up there in New York. They shot I was in it, but they did a beautiful job on this video that you're going to be seeing. And it's pretty hard hitting, right? We actually talk about the slave trade. We connect it to those who slander the Jews about the slave trade and as an obfuscation of what's actually going on in the current slave trade. So we actually have a video about that. Probably in the next month or so, I have to check out with the team and connect with them. Charles, if you're watching this, I know I owe you another text and we need to do a quick meeting. But iabolish.org, you can check out that website there. It's not linked to IBSI.org just yet, but you will have a link there and you will be able to make donations to iabolish.org through IBSI because we will serve as the fiscal agent for that organization as well. So in other words, our nonprofit will serve as some kind of an umbrella for iabolish.org, as Olga was just saying, not just telling you about it, not just what you need to know, right? But letting you know, here's what you can do. Here's how you can help be a part of it. If you're saying, yeah, again, I want to be a part of a modern day abolitionist movement, well, we have connected with Charles Jacobs and iabolish.org. And so we are excited about doing that. It's been a passion of mine for years, right? I began to study about the Darfur region, ladies and gentlemen, back in the 90s, right? This was something that was on my heart a while ago, just something God placed on my heart. I didn't know about it until a friend of mine began to talk to me about what's happening in Christian communities. So for the last 30 plus years, this has been a passion of mine. And it was just a natural fit with what Institute for Black Solidarity in Israel does. And again, ladies and gentlemen, because Christians are free, Muslims are free, Jews, Baha'i are free in the Jewish state of Israel. When you go throughout the land, you see, oh, there's a mosque, there's a church, there's a Catholic church, there's a evangelical church, there's a synagogue, and again, you have people living together in freedom and in harmony. So it's, again, perfect, absolutely not perfect, but again, there's religious freedom there. Someone just posted Joshua and Olga earlier today. I don't know her personally, but a young lady from UK. About what happens when when they are fleeing the country. These are from West Africa, very poor, fled, and they got to as far as Tunisia, and the authorities took them out to the desert to fend for themselves, right? And I commented on there, yeah, in Libya, there's make them slaves, right? Hamas was working with other organizations and literally, I'm not trying to be gross, harvesting the organs of Sudanese and Eritreans who would be found in the Sinai, right? So when people talk about Israel's a racist, say people that not only is it not true that Israel's some sort of racist regime, again, not perfect like by any other stretch, but people, they whether they realize what they're doing or not, and them slandering Israel, they're also taking your eye off the ball that there are people who are being enslaved, who are being killed, who are being trafficked, whose organs are being harvested, like a horror show, ladies and gentlemen. This is happening, and it's not happening in Israel. Israel's not doing that to refugees. Israel's not doing that to people who are up there. But again, it is happening all over the region and other parts of the world. So again, it's why it's so important to tell the truth about this story. We've come up just about on our hour. Josh and Olga and I done most of the talking. Again, I want to say this real quick. First of all, every Monday, each Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, we have what's called IBSI's Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. We touch on different topics. I'll be with you much of the time, but then there'll be times they'll kick the old person out of the way. It will be hosted by Joshua. It will be hosted by Olga. We'll have different guests that will join us as well. So I want you to put it on your calendar, ladies and gentlemen. Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, our forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America, every Monday. Put it on your calendar, 8 p.m. Eastern, right? Again, for our friends in Africa and Israel, I know this is the middle of the morning for you, so you might be watching this on the recording. We're not doing it on purpose. At some point, we're going to have an afternoon one here. That's so you can join us. We would love to, because we want to be able to hear from you as well, all right? So please do that. Someone just said an hour well spent. Well, thank you so much, Dina. I believe that's on there. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Joshua, do you have anything you have to say to the people as well?
If everyone can hear me, hold on.
A little soft.
Can everyone hear me better now? Can everyone hear me better now?
Yes, sir.
If everyone can hear me, then you go to IBSI.org and
it's going in and out. It's doing a weird thing. It's going clip. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh.
Go ahead. Say it again, then.
IBSI.org/no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was a minute ago. I'm not sure what that is. There's something that's happening with it and everything. But I think he was saying to go IBSI.org, IBSI.org. Again, we are tax deductible. We are a nonprofit organization. All the gifts are tax deductible. Click on donate. And we're really encouraging you. Again, everything that we've been able to do this far is because of the generosity of our donors. So thank you all. Thank you. We have some other things that are planned, including our IBSI pastors. So we definitely need your help as we go into this next season. And we're encouraging those of you to consider being a legacy builder. A legacy builder is a monthly giver of anywhere between $10 and more a month. Just go to IBSI.org, click on donate. Click on that. You'll see the little give butter link, and you'll see the different campaigns that are there, and you can become a legacy builder. You can do it as an organization, as a synagogue, as a church. We have different ones who become all of those things have been from different communities and organizations and individuals. So we'd love for you to do that as we are embarking on this next season. So we want you all to do that with us, and we're looking forward to that. So, all right, I think I have some stuff. I'm going to cue up some of the music. So we're just working on all these different things. Thank you for joining us again on Clubhouse. Again, appreciate you all. We're on all these different mediums as well. You can go to IBSI.org, scroll down, you'll see the social media, and you'll see us streaming everywhere. So thank you all so much for joining us. I see, is that Pastor Hall? Great forum. Thank you for sharing this, Pastor Hall. I believe that's Pastor Matrilla Hall down there in Atlanta. Shout out to you, ma'am. We're going to be with you guys in September here pretty soon. Shout out to our friends out there also in Milwaukee, because we're going to be with you. Pastor Melva, if you're listening to this on a recording, we're supposed to be coming there in September, I think. So we're going to fix that. And also helping, I'm honored to teach a class with Pastor Melva Henderson out there at World Outreach Church. They have a Bible type of institute. There's a name of it. Please forgive me. I didn't bring that link with me, so I'll give you some more information about it later on. But again, excited about joining them out there. So let's go up and cue that music as well. So, yep. Again, everyone, thank you so much for coming. Join us next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Same bat time, same bat channel. And we're going to have some more for you and discuss some more of these. We have a lot more to get to, but hopefully next week we can pick up from there. Thanks, everyone. Great to be with you. Have a great night.